Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing, the Fawn Pod, the Fawncast. This is Cody, and I am back with one of my Classic or Crap James Bond 60th Anniversary Series installments. Been a while since we had one of these because the school year is kicking my butt, and Halloween is coming closer. And people that know me know I put so many hours into the Halloween party every year. So it's been kind of a premium for time. Luckily, we have a 3-day weekend here for Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. And I was able to get through one of these movies start to finish, which is kind of nice. Should also point out the elephant in the room here, which is if you are a longtime listener of our show, or at least from the past few months, as I've been doing these half episodes by myself, they don't usually drop on a Monday. Monday is the time when we drop our main installments with multiple hosts every week for you all. And that's a streak that we've had for 80 some weeks at this point. But due to the nature of our podcast topic that we're going to have come out this week, we were not able to manage to get that in by Monday morning for all of you because we wanted to include an extra host on the topic. And so we are going to be talking about a recent show that just ended and review that whole series in the next episode that's going to come out here probably tomorrow, in the main line, Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing installments. So just to kind of explain what's going on here with that, we will get that one to you stat. We'll be recording that actually on Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, for all of you to share and have some good thoughts. And I think we're probably going to have some debate on that one based on what I know one of the hosts is probably going to say about it. So, not sure on the third host, though. We'll have to see where that all goes. But anyway, enough about what's coming up. We are dropping this in the middle of our Spooktober season. Hope you've been enjoying that so far. And we have some more installments for you yet to come in the month of October. But back to James Bond. We are looking at the second outing today of two by Mr. Timothy Dalton. His first film for us, which was The Living Daylights, managed to get a 68 out of 100 for its score. This time we're taking a look at License to Kill, which came out in 1989, I believe. That looks like that is correct. I don't think the Dalton movies are looked at, again, very fondly by people. No pun intended. But I thought The Living Daylights was serviceable. It was only 2 points off being classic. I did ultimately rank that one crap with the score of 68, as mentioned, which was too bad because it did have some decent elements to it. But let's see how License to Kill stacks up in this one, as we're looking at the last installment here of Timothy Dalton before we get to Pierce Brosnan, who has 4 movies coming up. And the next one in the line is GoldenEye. And I did pledge that when I got to GoldenEye, I would also be taking a peek at the video game GoldenEye as well. So we'll have to see if I can squeeze that in over a future installment here. I'm not even sure how that's going to work. That would be the ideal scenario for like a Twitch account. I'm not acquainted with how to necessarily do that, so mine's going to look a little more like probably just some audio whilst I reminisce and talk through some stages, and play some GoldenEye. So that's more likely what's going to happen here. So all right, enough yitter yatter. Let's get into this today. Classic or Crap, License to Kill, Timothy Dalton. Let's take a peek here. We are starting off with our title and theme, as we typically do on these. And I should mention this is the 18th one of these that I have done. So, wow. It has been quite an undertaking to get through all these films. And, something like I've said multiple times, I was really looking forward to doing at some point in my life here because there's a lot of these I haven't seen. I've probably seen most of the ones left, but I haven't even seen the newest nine, if you will. I haven't even seen all of those. So let's get into this. Here we go. Title for this one, License to Kill. Uh, Bond is more or less fired in this, and we'll get to the plot later on. But we know that as a 007 agent for MI6, Bond is given a license to kill in his line of work. And that's revoked here in this one. And I don't know that the title of the film necessarily plays into the events of the film. Spoiler, is victorious at the end of this, but it's not like there's this person that he wants to kill or something, and he's not given the right to do that, and then later he's granted the license to kill. Dun dun dun. There's none of that here. So it seems like they really just took a term from the older Bond films and maybe the books and just kind of borrowed that for the title of this one. And it definitely seems to be that that's the case behind the scenes here as well, as I'm on the trusty Wikipedia page as always when I do one of these, and basically said this is the first title that wasn't the title of an Ian Fleming story, good old Uncle Ian. But it has mostly original plot, a couple tiny things they may have borrowed from some other stories, both novels and short stories as well with James Bond. So long-winded way to say that I'm going to give the title 3 out of 5. I do like the title. It's iconic in terms of not only the pantheon of the Bond stories, but also if you've played the N64 GoldenEye game, you also know that there's a license to kill mode. That's the one shot, one kill mode that you play with people, which was always our favorite to play in college as well. So 3 out of 5 on this first one. Next up is the theme. This is Gladys Knight that does the theme for this one. And, should mention as well, we get a nice follow-up song at the end of all of this, which is a Patti LaBelle song, If You Asked Me To. That doesn't factor into our score here again at all. But I thought Gladys Knight does a really nice job with this one. It's a very classy song. It's I guess I don't know which Bond that would fit. Maybe more like Roger Moore style Bond. It might have fit a little bit better with. Even in 1989, to get like a Gladys Knight as your main artist for this seems like a bit of an odd choice, but it was good. It's a good song. I mean, the License to Kill song is a good song. It's not one of my favorites, but it's one of those songs you listen to and you're just like, yeah, this is a decent jam. This is pretty good. And he kind of gets you going a little bit just in terms of like, it's got a smooth beat and you start to kind of bop your head along with, got a lot to kill. It's good stuff. So it's not a band or artist that I particularly love, but for what we have here, even if tonally it doesn't necessarily fully match, the movie is less suave than the music. Let's put it that way. But 7 out of 10 is our score here for the theme. And so we're starting off with two kind of middle of the road scores on title and theme, 3 and 7. Let's get into our performances. So our 3 categories here again, if you haven't listened to me back when I was doing these once or twice a week, we have Bond portrayal, we have the main Bond woman, and then we have the Bond villain. Okay, starting with Timothy Dalton in his last outing as James Bond. I'm going to start by saying I think any disdain or hatred that this guy ever got for playing Bond is completely unwarranted, because I liked his performance. I gave him a 12 out of 15 in the last film. And if anything, I thought he did an even better job in this film. His official score is going to be 13 out of 15. But what we have here is a proto Daniel Craig. And I may have even mentioned this in the last podcast. I don't recall. But he has less emotional range. He has more anger. He has more in-your-facedness. He's more take no shit from anybody, but in different way than like Sean Connery was, right? Like he'd just come in and like punch a guy or slap a girl or whatever. And Dalton's just like, if you cross him, like you're going to pay for it. And that's just how he is. But his performances have been really good. I thought they both were really good performances. This one was great. He does a ton of hand-to-hand stuff, a lot of stunts that he does himself, you can tell. There may have been a stunt person here or there, but it's a believable job. He mostly is able to focus on action in this film. We should point out as well, because there isn't like an overly complicated or involved plot with a lady in this film. And there's not necessarily, at least once you get into the film a little bit, there's not like a lot of side plot spent on friendships or other things like that, or even though like the connection to MI6 kind of fades away, when he kind of takes matters into his own hands here a little bit, which I guess maybe that's, yeah, but that'd be the opposite of License to Kill. I don't know. It's a weird title. But anyway, I thought he did a fantastic job as Bond. He's going to get a 13 out of 15 for me. And it's his only two, being a 12 and a 13. Again, whenever this all wraps up, hopefully by the end of the calendar year is my goal. This is again going to be a really close actor to judge out, because eventually I'm going to average these out, all their performances. And so with only two, he's got a 12 and a 13, which is a 12 and a half, which is, I mean, that'd be like, 82%, give or take. Not too shabby. So I think he's going to do pretty well for himself. Okay, on to the Bond women. We have a love affair. That's the wrong word. Maybe just an affair, I guess. He is spending some time with a character named Lupe, who is the prototypical bad guy's lady. And then we have a secondary character here who comes in later named Pam Bolivar. And she, I guess, turns into the classic Bond lady who's going around helping him. Both pretty good looking ladies. The Pam character in particular that I'm going to rate here primarily as the Bond lady did a really nice job in terms of practical effects with action, be it shooting guns or flying planes or driving cars, or she's kind of all over the place and does a little infiltration of a drug smuggling base or drug processing base, I guess is more accurate. So she does a really nice job with this. I don't have a ton to say about her character. This is Carey Lowell, it says, that plays this character. I'm unfamiliar with this actress. It does say she's best known from being in Law and Order for 5 years and then coming back a second year in 2022. She is secondarily known, according to Wikipedia, as this Bond girl, Pam Bouvier. I'm sorry, I said Bolivar. Bouvier in License to Kill. So nothing too much detail on her, just to say it was solid. But the amount of action she performed herself on this is going to give her a 12 out of 15 from me, which is actually pretty good for the lady scores. Not a lot of them get that high. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's even too high. I don't know, but she does so much action herself is why she got that high. But that actually ties for the highest score for the ladies. Wow, is that accurate? I don't know if she was that good, but she did hold her own. I'm going to drop her down to an 11 on air. Look what's happening right now. I'm dropping her down to an 11. But again, character development wise, there's not much there. But in terms of what she does in the movie, at least she does something in the movie, which is my complaint with a lot of these other girls who've gotten 7s and 8s and even the 9s. Like, they just don't do anything. Here they do. Okay, last thing up here for performances is the villains. Only really scoring the primary antagonist in this one, although there's a fun henchman played by Benicio del Toro, which was kind of unexpected. And I guess a side cameo by Wayne Newton as well, who is getting money coming in to the drug operation also. But primarily our antagonist here is played by Robert Davi. And Robert Davi, I know, has had a long career, but of course, I know him primarily as Jake Fratelli from the Goonies. So it's kind of fun to see him in a Bond movie, which, 85 was the Goonies. This is 89. So he's in his peak. I'll be honest, I did not expect much of him in this. And that's maybe just because I saw him as the bumbling guy from the Goonies when this started up, and I was like, Robert friggin' Davey is the villain in this movie. I tell you what, Robert friggin' Davey in this movie is pretty dang good. He's pretty dang good. He's confident. He is somebody who doesn't underestimate. There we go. Words. James Bond, because he doesn't know who Bond is for a lot of the film. Now, you could say that that's stupid. We could talk about that in a bit here. But once he does discover who Bond is, he tries to kill him off in typical bad guy ways. But he did a ton of hand-to-hand combat himself, which I also commend, because a lot of times we have henchmen only doing the combat, and then, Bond at the very end finally catches up to the bad guy, and that's going to be the 5-second fight scene where the bad guy dies or blows up or whatever. That's what I thought. He did a really nice job. I thought he was a believable antagonist. I thought he, especially for the last like 25 minutes of the movie, held his own as far as action sequences with Bond. I thought his plan in the movie, which we'll talk about in a second with the plot, but was a bit convoluted, I don't really think it would work like that type thing, but it was a different idea. He had a different take again than some of the previous movies had, and I always appreciate when it's not just, and then I will destroy the world, ha 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 ha, which seems to be the case in so many of these Bond movies, because got to have a big boom boom, otherwise we don't have a fun plot, right? No. As I mentioned several times, I actually like the ones with the smaller plots. Those have been some of my favorite movies so far. So, okay, let's go on here. So it's overall some pretty strong performances here. 13 out of 15 for Bond, 11 out of 15 for Pam, and 8 out of 10 for Frank. So they did better in the performance categories than they did title and theme. Okay, on to the plot and the action. Our final two categories, 45 points on the line. This is going to be almost half, if you can't remember how I score these. I'm going to trust the handy Wikipedia summary, but I will try to cut these down a little bit as much as I can on this one. We have Bond and Felix Leiter, I never know how to say it, Leiter, I guess, on their way to Leiter's wedding in Key West, and they're trying to stop drug lord Franz Sanchez. Now, that's Robert Davies' character. Basically, pretty cool scene here. They hook onto Sanchez's plane with a helicopter and basically just keep yanking until the plane is nose down and can't fly anywhere, which I thought was a really inventive way to like stop a plane from flying, because I mean, I guess it could pull downwards. I don't know. I don't know if the helicopter has enough upthrust to counter that or what would happen exactly, but Sanchez is going to escape because he bribes one of the agents, I think with like a $2 million bribe. And then we have Sanchez doing some really evil stuff here, which is essentially that he has Leiter lowered into a pond with a shark, which eats basically the bottom half of his leg, I think, off of Leiter, and also Sanchez also kills Della, his new wife, and there is some implication that there may have been more to that scene that we didn't see on camera, perhaps being raped in her wedding dress. So pretty dark stuff here. Okay, Bond and his friend Sharky, who was Leiter's friend as well, start their own investigation, and they find a marine research center run by a guy named Crest. And we find out that there is some hidden cocaine in a submarine used there for smuggling, even though he tries to hide it from Bond in that scene. Bond kills one of the evil dudes in the same shark tank, and M flies down to Key West to talk to him and tells him he needs to go to Istanbul. And this is at the Hemingway house in Key West, which if I recall the trivia, I think maybe Ian Fleming wrote a lot of these books in the Hemingway house. I don't have that right here, but I do feel like that's the case. Anyway, Bond gets ordered to go to Turkey, and Bond says he won't go. He's going to go after Leiter's killers. And M says no. And essentially, he resigns, but instead, M refuses to accept his resignation and revokes his license to kill. So I guess that's the whole license to kill thing there. But again, it's like a negative license to kill. So I don't know. Anyway, Bond goes on the lam, but he does later get some help from Q, even though Q is not supposed to be there helping him. Bond goes aboard this guy Crest, goes aboard his ship, and basically ruins the latest drug shipment, and he also steals $5 million in the process. This is where Bond first meets up with Pam Bouvier, who is both a pilot and a drug enforcement agency informant for the United States, and goes with her to the Republic of Isthmus, which I guess is a made-up place they use for this. He poses as an assassin to get on Sanchez's employment, and come to find out that a couple of the sellers Sanchez was trying to sell to were actually Hong Kong Narcotics Bureau officers, and they stop Bond's attempt to assassinate Sanchez. Basically, are all super mad at him because he ruined their sting operation that they had been planning for so long. Sanchez is rescued. I'm sorry, Sanchez rescues Bond because he kills the Hong Kong officers who he thought they were assassins. And then basically we find Bond framing Crest later on by putting the $5 million aboard Crest's ship. And this is kind of a little team that's developed at this point now with Pam Bouvier, Q, who has showed up, and Sanchez's girlfriend, Lupe Lamora, who has also got the hots for Bond as well, I might add. Pretty nasty death here. Sanchez thinks Crest is stealing from him, throws him in a decompression chamber, cuts the oxygen cord, and basically Crest just like slowly expands, decompressing until he like explodes essentially. Like it's just gnarly. And Bond is taken into the inner circle of the villain. So I should point out again, that's kind of a new or rarely used plot device in these movies as well. Bond kind of joining with the bad guys, if you will, posing with them undercover, which usually he's just on the hunt. I mean, he always tries to be disguised as somebody, but it's very infrequent that a villain in the movies actually like takes him on as, one of their own. Okay, Sanchez takes Bond to his base, which is basically underneath a religious cult. This is where we see Wayne Newton's character, who's a televangelist, which is just fantastic. Oh my God. Such a great casting job for that role. It's really funny. Anyway, we find out Sanchez has developed some kind of formula where the cocaine that he's smuggling can dissolve in gasoline, petrol, and then he can filter the gas back out, and somehow it returns to cocaine, which is just bizarro. But anyway, let's see here. Televangelist Joe Butcher, yeah, this is Wayne's character, Wayne Newton. He's using TV broadcasts under the premise of being like I said, a televangelist calling for donations to come in. And essentially what they're doing is like selling drugs over the TV waves, which is kind of hilarious. It really makes you wonder what's going on with all those telethons we've had back in the 80s and 90s. Okay, what else do we have here? Dario, this is Benicio del Toro's character, comes into the room. He recognizes Bond. Bond starts a fire in the lab. He's captured. He's put into a conveyor belt where he's going to fall and be crushed to death, essentially. But just at the last second, Pam Bouvier arrives and shoots Dario. Dario is thrown into the processing machine. And again, we have really another gruesome death in this one, which is like the camera's underneath these pulverizing rotating gears, and we see like blood and chunks of something dropping out of the bottom of this thing. It's understood that it's pieces of Dario, the henchman, Del Toro's character, and it's just gross, but it's kind of awesome at the same time. So, okay, then we get this really extended last chase scene with Sanchez and everybody else from the base running away because it's on fire and exploding. but they had managed to fill 4 gas tankers full of the cocaine mixed with the petrol. Bond chases after them by plane. Pam's flying this. We get a chase through the desert, down mountains, all sorts of stuff here. Um, all kinds of really fun stuff where Bond's hopping around and, sliding underneath these semis and hiding between the cab and the tanker and all these different things. And essentially, long story short, it's a very long sequence. 3 of the tankers are destroyed, and then we have a fight on the final tanker between Sanchez and Bond. And the tanker eventually runs off the side of a hill and kind of crashes, but Sanchez had been voluntarily letting himself be soaked in gasoline that was coming out of the back of all this because he didn't care. Like, he was just there to try to kill Bond. But now that it's crashed, Sanchez gets the drop on Bond. It looks like he's getting in with his machete, and then Bond says something to make Sanchez pause for 1 second, and Bond gets out the cigarette lighter that he got for being the best man at Leiter's wedding. And we have basically kind of a little mini flamethrower with that. Sanchez starts on fire, and he stumbles around on fire. This is Robert Davies' character, which essentially causes the final tanker to blow up. I should point out, how many times do you think a tanker full of gas can blow up? Because we have the big tank, of course, and maybe like the actual gas tank of the truck could also blow up. But we have about 10 different explosions that take place from this tanker truck, and I'm not really sure how that's possible. Especially once the tank blew, I would have to think that would be basically everything, but somehow we get about 10 explosions from all this. So there's that. All right, Bouvier arrives back with let's say here, the truck part of a different semi that was from the chase earlier, picks up Bond, and then they go. Sanchez's former house, we have a party that's being held, and M calls Bond, congratulating him, and basically offers him his job back. And Bond has to choose between Lupe, who was Sanchez's girlfriend that he did stay the night with at one point, or Pam Bouvier. And Lupe is kissing him, and Pam gets extremely jealous and storms off, and Bond jumps over the balcony into a pool, pulling Pam into the pool. And of course, ha ha ha, they giggle and laugh it up as the film ends, and Q is drinking champagne by himself up at the top, watching them, shaking his head before he leaves. So kind of also different, because usually these films end with Bond and a girl in some secluded place, and that was also not the case at the end of this one. So there you go. Some other fun notes on this one. I just thought, again, the appearance by Wayne Newton, that was such a fun cast. And also the character played by Benicio del Toro. It's a very small role, but it's just kind of fun to see him in 1989 in a film like this. Certain parts earlier in the film I had some notes on as well, which were, just that parts of this film gave off like Roadhouse vibes in the beginning, which I meant that in the nicest, best way possible. Also, there's a part where a person Bond is fighting with actually takes a giant swordfish off the wall and tries to start stabbing Bond with the sword of the swordfish, which was both hilarious and awesome, I thought, at the same time. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody pull down, like, I think it was mounted as well. Like, it was a mounted swordfish, and they're using this as their weapon, board and all. Like, kudos to you, sir. Kudos to you. Also fun, like, this is 1989, so there was a scene where Bond was like trying to get information off a computer and had to load up a CD in the CD-ROM, and I was like, wow, that just looks so weird for a spy movie. But I guess that's probably where we're headed to now. CDs are in 1989 and probably will be there for another film or two, maybe. I don't know. How long does CD stick around for? It seemed like a long time, but then we got flash drives not too long after that. We'll see. Wedding story again in this one. We haven't had a good wedding story, I don't think, since Bond himself got married back in the day. This one looks like the end of Leiter as a character. So he's somebody that's popped up in quite a few of these films dating back here. So that's another long-standing character they've gotten rid of. And we know eventually here we're going to get some other new characters. They're going to have to replace some of these. Moneypenny, for example, I think had been replaced already by this point with her niece or something, but kept the same name. And eventually we're going to have to get Q replaced as well, and M also, as these films go on. So those will be some changes we'll be looking for as they happen. And then last note here just was when Q went rogue and kind of went out to help Bond by himself. That was really fun to see, like just Q in the wild with Bond, like kind of helping. It's like every once in a while when you have a Batman plot and Alfred hops in and instead of his normal role that you're used to seeing him in all the time, he's in suddenly this different capacity, and it's a lot of fun to just see Q out in the field, like working with Bond and even getting in on some of the action, like when he probably should have turned tail and ran because it was safer, he stuck out for Bond. So, okay, our scores on this one. We have plot 20 out of 30. A little silly with the cocaine that could dissolve in gas and somehow get reformed, but kind of different. And then we have just kind of a fun, like I said, Bond is undercover but working for the bad guy, or it seems to be at least for a while. So pretty good. And then action in this movie is fantastic. I mean, one of the top, when I'm looking at scores here, one of the top 4 for just pure action. And, I think given the right plot elements in a Timothy Dalton film for Bond, that makes sense because he is probably the most physical Bond that we've had so far. So 20 out of 30 for the plot, 14 out of 15 for the action. And quote in this one, again, Dalton's not as big on the puns as some of the previous Bonds were. So I actually chose a quote from Franz Sanchez, Robert Davies' character. He has like this accountant guy who's like stressed about all the money they're losing when the base is going up in business and the tankers are exploding. And he makes this little quip after the guy whines about how much money we're bleeding. Davies' character says, I guess it's time to start cutting overhead, and then unleashes his Uzi on the guy and kills his accounting henchman. So there we go. I guess it's time to start cutting overhead. All right, ladies and gents, let's do the quick math on this. We got 14, 20, 8, 11, 13, 7, and 3. License to Kill has a score higher than I would have guessed on this. And also a score that I would guess most people would not have given him one this high. But we have License to Kill at a total tonight of 76, which means this is a classic. Matter of fact, this is only points away from getting up in our top 3, which sounds crazy, but here we are. So 76 our score tonight from License to Kill. Okay, I'm going to drag this out too much just to say here again, this is kind of unusual the way we're bringing these to you this week, but rest assured we are going to catch up with you tomorrow in a galaxy far, far away, or maybe a different galaxy far, far away. As we'll have Brett and Justin joining me then for that one, and we'll get back to our normal installments here for Spooktober, minus this one entry from Star Wars that we're going to take a look at. Yeah, I think that's about it, everybody. I love this month. So apologies again for the order here, but we're rocking and rolling. We're living it up. And I think that's it. So until next time, again, this has been Cody. And this has been the Fondcast, the Fond Pod. This has been Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.